Finding Dory is directed by Andrew Stanton, co-written by him and Victoria Strauss, and features the voices of Ellen DeGeneres, Albert Brooks, Hayden Rollins, and Ed O'Neill. And in Finding Dory, Dory starts recalling bits and pieces of memories from her childhood, most notably memories involving her parents. So she, Marlin, and Nemo set out to find her parents, and they eventually end up at the Marine Life Institute in California. Now, when I heard that they were making a sequel to Finding Nemo, I just was not sold on it. Like, I was thinking, were they going to get Nemo kidnapped again? You know, what were they gonna do with the plot? And when I heard that they were making Dory the main character, I was thinking, oh no, it's gonna be like Cars 2, making the side comic relief character the main character. It's like Minions. But then the latest trailer came out, and I started thinking to myself, this seems to have the heart and the humor of the first one, so I was pretty excited going into it, and I have to say that I loved Finding Dory. And, you know, it's not on the same level as like a Toy Story sequel. It's not as bad as like a Cars 2, but it's definitely still a great solid movie. It's lower down on the Pixar scale, but we're kind of spoiled by Pixar now. But still, there's a lot of great stuff in this movie. Andrew Stanton's direction is better than ever. The visuals are just incredible, and the voice cast once again really brings a ton of laughs and heart to the material. Now, like I said, I was nervous at first that Dory wouldn't be able to carry this entire movie, but I think Ellen DeGeneres is just so good as this character that she manages to really carry this whole movie on her shoulders. And what I like so much about Dory is that this character really is able to bring out the best of Ellen DeGeneres' frantic and charming style of comedy. But it's not just the comedic stuff that really works here. It's also the dramatic aspect, you know. DeGeneres really is able to dig deep into Dory's psyche and, you know, the tragedy of her short-term memory loss. All the other voice actors are good as well. It's nice to hear Albert Brooks again as Marlin. He's definitely a supporting character in this movie. He doesn't have that much screen time, but he's just as good as he was before. And I like that he still has kind of like a little arc in this movie, so he's not just there for like just because it's a sequel to Finding Nemo. Speaking of Nemo, the character is now voiced by Hayden Rollins because Alexander Gold from the first movie obviously grew up. He's a lot more, the character of Nemo is a lot more mature in this movie, which does make sense. But for me, the new characters really steal the show here. Just like in Finding Nemo, you have a lot of really entertaining supporting characters in this movie, most notably Caitlin Olsen and Ty Burrell as a couple of whales, and they're really, really funny because they do certain things with their voices. But the real breakout star in this movie is Ed O'Neill as Hank the Octopus, or Septopus because he's missing a tentacle. His performance is great. It's really this mix of grumpiness and fear and compassion at the same time. It's all rolled into one, and it's just such a joy when he's on screen. Also, Sigourney Weaver. That's all I'm gonna say, but those who have seen it will get what I'm saying. But Sigourney Weaver, good job. Going back to Hank though, he's really memorable as a character, not just because of his voice, but because of how they animated him. Like, his animation is so great because he has this ability to camouflage, and they really play around with that, and there's lots of really, really funny visual gags throughout the movie because he's trying to hide himself. And all in all, the visuals in Finding Dory really are fantastic. The water effects here are pretty much photorealistic at this point. But curiously though, Finding Dory has a much more muted color palette than Finding Nemo did. Which is kind of strange because it's weird that, you know, 13 years later, Finding Nemo is still more colorful and more vibrant, to my eyes at least. But I feel like the relative murkiness in this movie does reflect Dory's point of view, and that's one thing I'll keep bringing up throughout this review, is that this movie really knows how to tell its story from Dory's point of view. So yes, we don't spend a lot of time in the ocean, but for what the Marine Life Institute is, it still does look very good, and through the visuals you really get a sense of the layout of this place. Now, a big reason as to why this movie still works, even if it has like a lot less of the great stuff that Finding Nemo has, is the fact that Andrew Stanton came back to direct it, and he really knows how to show off like this institute from the point of view of the fish. To some fish it's like a prison, to some fish it's like a hospital, so there's like one scene that's directed almost like a horror movie, and it's really, really funny because of it. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. But then there's also another scene that happens in the movie that comes off very, very sad and very heartbreaking, and that kind of handle on tone is like one of the reasons why Andrew Stanton is a great Pixar director. But again, Andrew Stanton's greatest achievement in this movie is that he's able to tell the story from Dory's perspective, and he really makes us understand Dory's disability and how much it hurts her and hurts the people around her. And what I like is that when you watch Finding Nemo, her short-term memory loss thing is played mostly for laughs, but it's not offensive. But here, when they go deeper into it, you begin to understand it and respect it as like a serious issue that she has. Thomas Newman returns to do the score in this movie, and unfortunately nothing really stands out for me in terms of music, which is not really a negative, it's just something I noticed. But if there is one piece of music that I really do remember from this movie, it's this song called "Oh We're Going Home" that's sung by a group of manta rays that are migrating, and it's a really nice song, and I want to listen to like the full version of it. Now I don't know if I'm making it sound like Finding Dory has like a ton of stuff in it, but rest assured that this movie does move very quickly. Again, the pacing is very fast, like its predecessor. The editing here is done by Axel Geddes this time, and he helps keep the story fixed on Dory's perspective as well. You know, there are a few moments throughout the movie that are flashbacks, and I think they're used fairly well. Marlin and Nemo don't really get as much screen time in this movie, so in that regard, it's not as balanced as Finding Nemo, in the sense that that movie really told two different stories at the same time, and it worked really well. But Finding Dory is a very different kind of story, and that I think is the primary difference between this movie and its predecessor. Finding Nemo is really more of an adventure story. Finding Dory I find is more of like a character study. But what I really enjoyed about the script here is that it's not just Dory who has like this problem, because it takes place in this fish hospital. Most of the characters here have disabilities, and the script never falls into that trap of making the characters be defined solely by their disabilities. They're still really good characters because they're well written. So Finding Dory is very touching, I think, in the sense that it's really about the struggles of people with disabilities, and more importantly, how to care for these people. At first, I thought that the dialogue was too exposition heavy, but I realized that a lot of this exposition is being aimed towards Dory, and you know, she is a character who needs things explained to her, so it made perfect sense. And all this introspective stuff really is the biggest strength of Finding Dory. So with that said, I didn't really enjoy the very last part of this movie, because the way they resolve the conflict has nothing to do with the disabilities, and it becomes this really frantic and unbelievable chase scene that I just felt like belonged to a completely different movie. Coupled with that, there are certain parts throughout the movie that I feel like could have been completely dropped from the film and nothing really would have changed. Chief example of which is the giant squid scene you might have seen in the trailer. It doesn't really last that long. It's not very memorable or funny or anything. I feel like they were just trying to copy the anglerfish scene from Finding Nemo, and it just didn't work. But I still do think that Finding Dory is a great movie. I think it continues the discussion about mental health that was started in Inside Out, so it is, I think, a very important movie, especially in this day and age. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Finding Dory. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.